Today's episode is about a very modern relationship crisis. A crisis that did not exist in this form 20 years ago. Today, people understand psychological language more than ever before. We talk about boundaries, triggers, attachment styles, trauma, gaslighting, narcissism, emotional availability, red flags, toxicity, love bombing, avoidant behavior, anxious, attachment, self-care, healing, holding space, and in many ways, that is a good thing. People are learning the language of mental health. People are naming patterns they once could not explain. People are recognizing emotional harm. People are understanding that relationships should not be built on fear, control, silence, or humiliation. That matters. But something else is happening too. Some people are using therapy language not to repair relationships, but to win arguments, not to understand their partner, but to diagnose them, not to take accountability, but to sound emotionally superior, not to become more curious, but to shut the conversation down. And that is where therapy language becomes dangerous. Today's episode is called The New Relationship Crisis: Too Much Therapy Language, Not Enough Repair. Let us begin with today's situation. A husband writes, "My wife and I used to argue like normal couples, but now every disagreement becomes a psychological diagnosis. If I disagree with her, she says I am invalidating her. If I ask for space, she says I am avoidant. If I tell her I felt hurt by something, she says I am projecting. If I explain my side, she says I am gaslighting her. If I ask for accountability, she says I am crossing her boundaries. I know I am not perfect. I make mistakes, but I feel like I cannot speak anymore without being labeled. Sometimes I wonder, are we actually healing? Or are we just using therapy words to attack each other more politely?" That is a very important question, because many modern couples are not short on language. They are short on repair. They know how to name the wound, but not how to heal it. They know how to say, "That triggered me," but not how to say, "I want to understand what happened between us." They know how to say, "That was toxic," but not how to say, "I also played a role in this pattern." They know how to say, "You are emotionally unavailable," but not how to say, "I feel lonely, and I do not know how to reach you." They know how to say, "I need boundaries," but not how to say, "I want closeness, but I also need respect." That is the difference between therapy language and emotional maturity. Therapy language gives us words. Emotional maturity teaches us what to do with them. Now, let us be very clear. Therapy language is not bad. In fact, it can be deeply helpful. For someone who has experienced manipulation, the word gaslighting may finally describe years of confusion. For someone who has been controlled, the word boundary may finally help them protect themselves. For someone who keeps ending up with unavailable partners, the phrase attachment style may help them understand the pattern. For someone who has lived with shame, the language of trauma may help them stop blaming themselves. Words can liberate. Words can clarify. Words can protect. Words can help people ask for help. Words can reduce stigma. So the problem is not the language. The problem is when language becomes a weapon, a shield, a shortcut, a label, a performance, a way to avoid the hard work of repair. Because a relationship is not healed by vocabulary. A relationship is healed by behavior, by humility, by accountability, by listening, by apology, by changed patterns, by repair, by returning to the person after rupture and saying, "I care more about us than about winning." That sentence is more powerful than 100 psychological terms. Now let us talk about how therapy language gets weaponized. The first way is labeling instead of understanding. Your partner is upset, and instead of asking, "What are you feeling?" you say, "You are being triggered." Your partner needs space, and instead of asking, "Do you need time to calm down?" you say, "You are avoidant." Your partner asks for reassurance, and instead of asking, What would help you feel safe? You say, you are anxiously attached. Your partner remembers something differently, and instead of exploring the difference, you say, you are gaslighting me. Sometimes these labels may be relevant, but often they are used too quickly. And when we label too quickly, we stop listening. A label says, I already know what this is. Curiosity says, help me understand what this means for you. A label closes the door. Curiosity opens it. The second way therapy language becomes harmful is when boundaries become control. A healthy boundary is about what I will do to protect my well-being. For example, if the conversation becomes insulting, I will pause and come back when we are calm. That is a boundary. But sometimes people say, my boundary is that you cannot talk to that friend. My boundary is that you must reply immediately. My boundary is that you cannot disagree with me. My boundary is that you must behave exactly the way I need. That may not be a boundary. That may be control dressed up in therapeutic language. A real boundary protects your dignity. It does not erase another person's freedom. A real boundary says, this is what I will do if something is harmful. It does not say, you must live according to my anxiety. That distinction is essential. The third way therapy language becomes harmful is when people confuse discomfort with harm. Not everything uncomfortable is toxic. Not every disagreement is emotional abuse. Not every criticism is gaslighting. Not every disappointment is trauma. Not every difference is incompatibility. Not every delayed reply is avoidance. Not every intense beginning is love bombing. Not every argument is a red flag. Sometimes discomfort is part of growth. Sometimes your partner is not harming you. They are disagreeing with you. Sometimes your partner is not invalidating you. They are offering another perspective. Sometimes your partner is not toxic. They are imperfect. And sometimes you are not triggered because your partner did something wrong. You are triggered because an old wound got touched. That does not make your feeling fake. Your feeling is real. But your interpretation may need more curiosity. This is one of the hardest relationship skills. To say, my feelings are valid, but my first interpretation may not be complete. That sentence can save many relationships. The fourth way therapy language becomes harmful is when people use it to avoid accountability. Someone says, I am sorry I hurt you. And the other person replies, you are only apologizing because you feel shame. Maybe, but maybe they are genuinely trying to repair. Someone says, can we talk about what happened? And the other person says, I do not owe you emotional labor. Sometimes that may be true, but sometimes it becomes a way to avoid a hard conversation. Someone says, I felt hurt when you shouted. And the other person says, you are projecting your childhood trauma onto me. Maybe there is projection, but also maybe you shouted, and maybe you need to take responsibility. Therapy language should not become a hiding place from accountability. If a word protects you from all reflection, be careful. If a word always makes your partner the problem, be careful. If a word makes you feel superior instead of curious, be careful. If a word ends the conversation instead of deepening it, be careful, because healing is not the same as winning. Now let us talk about repair. Repair is one of the most important skills in a relationship. Not because healthy couples never hurt each other. They do not. Not because healthy couples never argue. They do. Not because healthy couples never misunderstand each other. They do. The difference is that healthy couples repair. They return after rupture. They soften. They take responsibility. They listen. They apologize. They clarify. They reconnect. They ask, how do we come back from this? That is the missing skill in many modern relationships. People know how to identify harm, but they do not know how to repair after hurt. They know how to say, that was a boundary violation, but not, what do we need to change so we both feel respected? They know how to say, you are emotionally unavailable, but not. Can we create a way to talk that feels safer for both of us? They know how to say, you are a narcissist, but not. I feel unseen, and I need us to talk about how we both show care. Again, there are real situations where labels matter. Abuse is real. Manipulation is real. Gaslighting is real. Coercive control is real. Emotional harm is real. And if someone is unsafe, the priority is safety, not repair. But in many ordinary relationships, people are not unsafe. They are unskilled. They are defensive. They are hurt. They are reactive. They are afraid. They are repeating old patterns. And those relationships need repair, not just diagnosis. Now, what does repair look like? Repair begins with interruption. A couple is arguing. The tone rises. One person gets defensive. The other becomes critical. The conversation starts to spiral. A repair attempt might sound like, "Can we slow down? I am getting defensive, but I do want to understand. I said that badly. Let me try again. I care about you. I do not want this to become a fight. I need 10 minutes to calm down, and then I will come back. I think we are both hurt right now. That came out harsher than I meant. I am sorry. I want to repair this." Notice something. Repair is not dramatic. It is not a speech. It is a small turn toward connection. It says, "I am not your enemy." That is what couples need most in conflict. The reminder that the person across from you is not the enemy. They are your partner. Now let us talk about humility. Humility in relationships means, I may not be seeing the whole picture. It means, my pain is real, but my story may be partial. It means, I can be hurt and still be unfair. It means, I can have good intentions and still cause harm. It means, I can know therapy language and still behave badly. That is hard, because many people use therapy language to protect the identity of being the wounded one, the aware one, the healed one, the emotionally intelligent one, the one who knows better. But in a real relationship, nobody is always the evolved one. Nobody is always the victim. Nobody is always the mature one. Nobody is always the problem. There may be serious exceptions, especially in abusive relationships, but in ordinary couple conflict, both people often contribute to the pattern. One pursues, one withdraws, one criticizes, one shuts down, one demands, one avoids, one escalates, one goes silent, one needs closeness, one needs space, one feels abandoned, one feels controlled. And each person thinks the other is the cause. Humility says, what is my part of the dance? That question is revolutionary. Not, what is wrong with you? But, what happens between us? Not, how do I prove I am right? But, how do we stop repeating this? That is relational maturity. Now, let us discuss accountability. Accountability is not self-hatred. It is not shame. It is not saying, everything is my fault. Accountability is the ability to say, I did that. I see the impact. I understand why it hurt. I am willing to change my behavior. That matters more than perfect language. A person can say all the right therapy words and still avoid accountability. They can say, I hear your feelings, but never change. They can say, I am holding space, but remain emotionally absent. They can say, I respect your boundaries, but keep crossing them. They can say, I am doing the work, but never repair the harm they caused. The real question is not, do they know the language? The real question is, do they change the pattern? Because insight without behavior change becomes performance. Now, let us look at common therapy words and how to use them better. The word triggered. Unhelpful use. You are triggered, so I do not have to listen to you. Helpful use. I feel activated. I need a moment to calm down before we continue. The word boundary. Unhelpful use. My boundary is that you do exactly what I want. Helpful use. If we start insulting each other, I will pause the conversation and return later. The word gaslighting. Unhelpful use. You remember it differently, so you are gaslighting me. Helpful use. I am experiencing this very differently. Can we slow down and compare what each of us remembers? The word narcissist. Unhelpful use. You disagreed with me, so you are a narcissist. Helpful use. I feel unseen in this relationship, and I need us to talk about empathy and reciprocity. The word avoidant. Unhelpful use. You need space, so you are avoidant. Helpful use. When you pull away without telling me when you will return, I feel anxious. Can we create a better pause and return plan? The word toxic. Unhelpful use. This conversation is uncomfortable, so it is toxic. Helpful use. The way we are speaking right now is hurting both of us. We need a different pattern. That is how therapy language becomes useful again. Not as a weapon, as a bridge. Now, let us talk about apology. A weak apology says, I am sorry you feel that way. That often sounds like blame in disguise. A better apology says, I am sorry I raised my voice. I can see how that made you feel unsafe. I was overwhelmed, but that does not excuse it. Next time, I will pause before I escalate. That is repair. It names the action. It recognizes the impact. It avoids excuses. It includes future change. And the person receiving the apology also has work. If the apology is sincere, do not automatically reject it just because you still feel hurt. Feeling hurt after an apology is normal. But you can say, thank you for apologizing. I am still hurt, and I need time. But I appreciate that you are taking responsibility. That keeps the door open. It allows repair to begin.